your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, I'm Jeanette Roche. Thanks for joining us for our Week in Review. In Lethbridge, there's a continuing issue with doctor shortages. Right now, the Prairie Treatment Opioid Dependency Clinic is the only place accepting new patients. Many patients have been going to the hospital emergency room to seek a doctor. Recently, 3 physicians have signed letters of recruitment as sponsored doctors and should be starting sometime this fall, while 7 other doctors are pending. Dr. Paul Parks, an ER physician with the Medicine Hat Regional Hospital, presented at SACPA on Thursday and said this is also an issue where he practices and the government needs to be held to account on the matter.
It baffles my mind that the government and the Minister of Health and the Premier aren't held to come down to Lethbridge and come see what actually it looks like when there are no family doctors. We will be the first to say we can't do primary care and preventative care in the emergency departments, and we desperately need that component, and we need Albertans to fight for it. And we need the communities to engage and advocate for it, because that's ultimately what the government's job is.
In Lethbridge, approximately 40,000 people are without a family doctor. The beautiful Nika Yuko Japanese Garden is up for a special award. The organization is a finalist for the 2022 Alberta Business Awards of Distinction in the Community Attraction category. The executive director of the garden, Michelle Day, says this nomination is important in furthering tourism to the area.
Even though people are coming here to learn, to experience some amazing experiences, such as our karaoke or sumo, weddings, understanding the history, they're leaving learning something, and they're holding that. And I think because we have such a unique story to Canada, it's really an honor that people are recognizing that.
The Alberta Business Awards of Distinction will be announced on June 24th at the Renaissance Edmonton Airport Hotel. It was a close call for one business owner in Lethbridge. A parked car was pushed through the front of the North Fabutan and Hush Lash studio location. The driver of one car hit another vehicle that was stopped at a red light on 2A Avenue and then made a sudden turn and crashed into a parked car in front of the Fabutan, pushing it into the front doors. The owner of the store, Lacey Miller, says the parked car pushed into the store was hers, and the harrowing scene was too close for comfort.
I'm not even sure if I can wrap around what was going through my head. Honestly, it was just the sound alone from the car coming through was like something I've never heard, just like the glass shattering, people screaming. So right away we ran out, and when we saw everything, it was just like literally a scene from a movie. Things are hanging, there's glass everywhere, there's dust flying, and my car inside the studio. And yeah, my first thought was just making sure everybody was okay, because there was a client in here and my girl who was working the desk at the time, but thank goodness they were both out of the way and nobody was injured. But definitely a scary thing to have to go through, for sure.
LPS officials laid a number of charges for traffic infractions, including reckless driving against a 51-year-old man. Mailer says she's hopeful to reopen her store in a few weeks to a month. It's a scary experience. As we celebrate our mothers this weekend, it's also important to appreciate the relationship parents have with their kids. Amy Reno is with the Visionary Family Ministry and author of the book, The Not So Perfect Mom. She says sometimes moms have a certain amount of guilt trying to have a special heart connection with their kids.
I think it's so easy as moms to get caught up in almost like a mindset. Again, another chapter of my book is that we're creating products instead of people. Do you know what I mean? In the sense that we have to create these super kids that are going to excel at something and get the scholarship and, have all these badges. And somehow that defines us as being great moms, when in reality, I don't think that's what any of us really want. We want our kids to be happy, and we want a lifelong relationship with them, a heart-connected relationship.
Author Amy Reno and I have more on a mom's special relationship with her kids, and you can catch that entire interview on our YouTube channel. There's never a dull moment in Alberta news and politics. Coming up after the break, we review the top provincial stories from this week and take a look at a recent war of words between the NDP and the UCP.
Our inputs have doubled, some of them even tripled in price. So it's just, we're paying more for our inputs. The bright side is we are getting more for whatever we do produce, but if we don't get any rain, we won't be able to produce much. So we may not even cover our expenses if we don't get some moisture.
The Alberta NDP is demanding that Finance Minister Travis Toews apologize to Albertans following a recent comment he made. A new report shows that average wages in our province are falling badly behind inflation. Toews allegedly said that there is no better cure for inflation than a better job with a higher wage. In a statement, NDP Labour critic Christina Gray says, quote, Travis Toews has completely lost touch with reality for working families in Alberta. Albertans who have jobs and work hard are falling further behind every month because Travis Toews is making them pay more in income and property tax, along with more school fees. Travis Toews is the reason Albertans are falling behind, end quote. Bridge City News reached out to Alberta Finance Minister Travis Toews to get his reaction to the comment by the NDP, and the minister sent us a statement. In it, he says, quote, for 4 years under the previous government, Albertans were left unemployed and underemployed with lower wages for everyone. This government is making a historic investment through the Alberta at Work program to train tens of thousands of Albertans for higher paying jobs in the future. On top of that, we have taken action to address affordability in cutting the fuel tax, providing a $150 rebate for electricity, and establishing a consumer protection program for high natural gas prices, end quote. Alberta's largest credit union is laying off staff. Service Credit Union did not immediately say how many employees were affected by the job cuts. The company made the announcement in a video posted on YouTube. In a quarterly update last month, the company reported net income of $28.6 million for the first quarter of the 2022 fiscal year. That's up 17.9% from the same period last year. The threat of job action by Alberta prosecutors appears to be over. Justice Minister Tyler Shandro says the province approved pay adjustments for prosecutors after an analysis of rates across the country showed their salaries were lower. Last month, the Alberta Crown Attorneys Association sent a letter to Shandro and Premier Kenney that included demands to address the chronic underfunding of the prosecution service. It also called for a salary grid on par with BC and Ontario. The group's president, Dallas Sobko, calls Shandro's announcement groundbreaking. Many farmers and ranchers across southern Alberta have been praying for rain and hoping that we don't see a repeat of last year when drought impacted so many producers. David Bishop is the former chair of Alberta Barley and current director with Alberta Wheat. David joined us earlier this week from just outside of Barron's, Alberta, where he farms. David told BCN what the conditions are like for southern Alberta dryland farmers.
It's not looking very good out here. It's pretty darn dry. We've been experiencing some dry weather the last few years, and it seems to be continuing at the moment. So, I mean, there is a forecast for some moisture coming this weekend, and I'm sure hoping that we do get it. They've often said to the weatherman that it's going to rain, and then it doesn't. So, we really need the rain. It's starting to become desperate, especially on dry land. Irrigation, of course, is okay, but the dry land really needs some moisture.
And as farmers in southern Alberta look ahead, David Bishop says another really dry summer will be a real problem, especially with the rise in input costs for our local farmers.
It'll be tough because of the fact that, our inputs have doubled, some of them even tripled in price. So it's just, we're paying more for our inputs. The bright side is we are getting more for whatever we do produce, but if we don't get any rain, we won't be able to produce much. So we may not even cover our expenses if we don't get some moisture.
That was David Bishop, director of Alberta Wheat, who farms just west of Barron's, Alberta. It's not very often you'd be nominated for an award at the start of your career, but two Southern Alberta teachers have. It's called the Edwin Parr Award. It was established close to 60 years ago, and it recognizes outstanding first-year teachers.
when I first got the news, I was honestly speechless. I wasn't expecting that news to come my way. It's been great to be recognized as a first-year teacher who is pouring their heart and soul into their job, and also being able to be recognized for all my hard work that I do put in.
Principal Mitchell Van Dyke nominated me. He came in and told me, I think I'm going to nominate you for the Edwin Parr Award because I really feel like you're doing an excellent job. And yeah, I was a little bit overwhelmed. So
the Edwin Parr Awards are on May 18th at the Heritage Inn in Tabor. Well, there's never a dull moment in Alberta politics. Up next, a discussion with a UCP MLA about Jason Kenney's future in Alberta as party leader. That's after the break.
It would be a challenge for sure. There are very few politicians with the amount of experience that Premier Jason Kenney has, and we'd have to see the outcome of that result to know exactly how we'll move forward. Thankfully, we do have some time.
Welcome back. There are many important issues facing Albertans. One of them is the leadership review of Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. Recently, BCN's Hal Roberts spoke with Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf about Jason Kenney's future in Alberta as party leader. They also discussed the new education curriculum, which Newdorf says students are finding success with. Have a look.
Nathan, the UCP leadership review is ongoing. Mail-in ballots must be in by May the 11th, and results will be known by May the 18th. Now, if Premier Jason Kenney is out as party leader, that could be a real challenge for the UCP. How tough would it be to replace a leader like Jason Kenney, especially leading up to next year's provincial election?
Absolutely. It would be a challenge for sure. There are very few politicians with the amount of experience that Premier Jason Kenney has, and we'd have to see the outcome of that result to know exactly how we'll move forward. Thankfully, we do have some time. A year is a long time in politics, but it can also be a very short time in politics. So we'd have our work cut out for us, that's for sure.
Now, if Premier Kenney doesn't get his 50+1 support from party members, would you ever consider putting your name forward as party leader?
Well, I've had a lot of people ask me that in the last month or so. I think we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Now, Premier Kenney says hydrogen is a big part of Alberta's future, which is a big reason why the province is investing around 50 million taxpayers' dollars into a new clean hydrogen centre. Is this really about diversifying our natural resources?
Absolutely, it is. People in Alberta have expected our government to diversify our economy, get away from the roller coaster ride of just trusting the energy prices in terms of oil and gas, as it is a very cyclical in nature. So moving into hydrogen accomplishes two things. One, it accomplishes our environmental goals of moving towards cleaner energy. And two, it does diversify the energy, the natural resources we have in a much cleaner way. So yes, it is about diversifying, but it has the added benefit of also moving us in the right direction environmentally.
At this point, do we know where it may potentially be built?
My understanding is that it's going to be somewhere near Edmonton to be close to the energy producers, as well as a major shipping hub of Edmonton and the capital city. It could change, but I suspect it'll be somewhere in that neighborhood.
Let's talk a bit about the school curriculum, which has been criticized extensively by educators, by parents, and of course the opposition NDP. A lot of it's rolling out in September. How do you respond to that kind of criticism when it comes to this new curriculum?
Well, here's where I get a little bit confused with people's criticism. Most of the criticism is about the social studies aspect of that, which is still being worked on and not being implemented this fall. The mathematics and language arts, where they've piloted it this year, they've seen 2 and 3 grade level increases in those children's learning. Those are what are going to be implemented this fall. So people without concerns are either not getting the whole story or not understanding the actual benefit of what's being done. I think we've heard those concerns about the social studies. That's why we've held that back and continue to work on it. But we've heard the praise and positive reports in learning for children in the mathematics and language arts and physical education pieces. That's why we're proceeding with those. And I think parents will see a great benefit to their children in those grades this fall and into the years ahead.
Now, Nathan, we've talked about attracting more doctors to our region. How about other business owners to help really diversify our economy here in Lethbridge? What's needed and what kind of businesses are needed here in our city?
Well, I think that's why news items like yours, Hal, when we focus on the positive. So when people do a Google search of where they want to live and they type in Lethbridge, for years past, especially after the previous administration, all we saw was bad news stories. We still have a large challenge in our opioids and addictions realm, but we've seen lots of positive investment. We've seen lots of steps in the right direction. Our new police chief is doing excellent work. In every sector of the city, we've seen crime go down. So we need to get that positive message out. So when people look to move here, we have a great college, we have a great university, we have lots of great resources and facilities, and we've got positive news and positive growth. So it's not just agriculture and food production, it's shipping, receiving. We've got the exhibition park being built, we've got the airport renovation just being done. We are growing, we're a hub for the South, and we've got lots more positive than we do negative, even though we have things to work on. I'm very excited about that, and I appreciate you and other news media outlets in putting forward the good news. When people look at Lethbridge, they see the good news stories.
After the break, we chat once again with independent researcher and retired police officer David Dixon. We'll hear Dixon's take on the most recent information coming from governments around the world about COVID-19 data. Keep it right here. Welcome back. It may feel like the virus that shut down the world for 2 years is a thing of the past, but according to independent researcher David Dixon, the provincial and world governments are still collecting and sharing their health data, and the numbers might surprise you. Here's part 2 of our segment with Dixon, who shares his thoughts on the latest data and how he believes it proves restrictions and mandates were ineffective. Have a look. How long, David, has it been since you've started investigating the government's COVID numbers? You said that there were discrepancies with their reporting, right?
It's been well over 2 years for me now, and none of the data has ever made sense to their reaction. And ironically, that is the case now as well, but in reverse. It's yeah.
What
when
do
you say
mean by
COVID
that,
is
in
over.
reverse?
So when everybody says people now are under the assumption that COVID is over, because about 4 or 5 weeks ago, not just the Alberta government, but every government in the world stopped reporting data. That didn't mean that the data stopped existing. They stopped reporting the deaths in the same way. They stopped reporting the information daily. They stopped reporting active cases. And because of that, because just like through the whole of COVID, people don't tend to look at the data. They just look at what the government's tell them, what the person on the TV says. And right now, we locked down back in March of 2020 with 19 active cases. How many active cases would you say we probably have now?
I'm not sure, actually. Probably
37,121 in Alberta.
Really?
Yep. When they actually decided to stop reporting weekly, it was trending up, and it was just over 8,000. In the last 4 weeks, we've gone from 8,000 to 37,121 active cases. Deaths over the last 4 weeks in the weekly reporting have been trending up, 30, 30, 37, 49, 62. Hospitalizations have been trending up in every single area. So when you consider how little it took for the government to actually impose all of these restrictions, why have they not imposed any restrictions when they actually have? We currently have more active cases than any other wave other than the fifth wave, but by a long shot, not by a couple of thousand, but by a significant amount.
That's interesting.
And yet,
so, David, do you think that they need to re-implement restrictions then?
I don't think they ever should have brought the restrictions in the first place, because the restrictions they brought in didn't actually help anyone. What they brought in is isolating healthy people, bringing in responses that didn't actually help anything. They just gave the perception that they were helping. But in every single case, when you look at every single restriction, from masks, for example, masks used properly, the right type of mask, have lots of uses in lots of different areas. Just telling the general population to stick a piece of cloth over your face doesn't help anyone, because nobody knows how to use them. Nobody knows. I mean, you ask any medical professional, you use it once, you throw it away. You don't keep using it. You don't keep touching it. So there's everything they've done, and it also went against every single principle of treating an ILR, an influenza-like illness. It's not influenza; it's a coronavirus. Even though when they locked us down, it wasn't actually Dina Hinshaw that locked us down. She didn't call a state of emergency. And it wasn't Jason Kenney either. It was Tyler Shandro, the Minister of Health at the time, under Order 608/2020, is the one who actually called the state of emergency. He's the one who instructed the Lieutenant Governor in Council to actually sign the order. That's one thing that came out of my court case, was that order exists, but if you actually look for it on the open government, it doesn't exist anywhere. It's missing.
I'm sure that he did it under the direction, though, of the top doctors like Dina Hinshaw or Verna Yu.
There was never, at that time, there was never any evidence to actually support doing that.
After the break, astrophysics on the prairies. We hear about the connection between our local university and NASA. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, the University of Lethbridge has received a $100,000 grant from the Canadian Space Agency to train the next generation of space scientists. Joining me to talk about their research is Dr. David Naylor, physics and astronomy professor and head of the Astronomical Instrumentation Group at U Lethbridge. Take a look. What will this grant money do exactly? What will the U of L do with it?
So when you do research, there are two things you look at. One is getting the equipment, the infrastructure, the hardware, and the second is the money to train students. And so we've been given funding from different grants for equipment. We have 4 industrial partners that are contributing upwards of $2 million. And this piece of the puzzle is for training of students. So these students will be high school students, possibly. We have had some in the past, undergraduate students, graduate students, and so forth. So we're training the next generation of bright minds on the technology that will be required to tackle the problems that will be coming down the pipes in the coming years.
That's amazing. So maybe paint a picture for me. So what will the students and researchers be able to do because of this grant and this program?
So most people don't realize that the moon in some ways is actually harder than Mars as an environment. Mars is really about a temperature of minus 50 degrees, minus 60 degrees Celsius. So Antarctica is actually colder than Mars, but the moon gets significantly colder around 200 Celsius, minus 200 Celsius, and that is because of its orbit, and it's sheltered. The night on the moon is 14 Earth days. So it means that surviving lunar night is a real challenge, and you have to have instrumentation that's checked out to do that. And we have the largest cryogenic test facility, which is kind of like an enormous beer fridge. I mean, it gets much colder, much faster, but it cools to temperatures that nowhere else can be achieved really for the volume that we have. So we can in principle cool a small rover, a medium rover and a nano rover in our cryogenic facilities. So students will be exposed to the technology that is associated with this kind of work. Basically, when you put things, if you get a glass of pop and put an ice cube in it, it cracks, it shatters. That thermal gradient just causes the ice cube to crack when you have a pop from the fridge. And pretty much everything you cool to these temperatures breaks. The optical, thermal, electrical, mechanical properties, everything, the properties of everything just fail as you get to extremely low temperatures. And so you must be able to design systems that will survive extreme cooling.
Has Canada had much involvement in influencing space exploration?
We're a small country, really, and so the tax base is small. So our space agency does not get the kind of funding that NASA does, for sure. Europe, the countries in Europe joined together to form the European Space Agency, and you have, I forget the number, but it's probably 15 countries, maybe more, and they each chip in, and then they do big things. Japan does it on its own. Russia did it on its own. China does it on its own. So Canada can't do it on its own. We just don't have the resources to do it. But there are a lot of really talented scientists and engineers in Canada. And what happens is that NASA and ESA invite us to join their teams. So Canada gets involved in space because of the expertise and excellence that exists in the professors in universities across Canada. And it's interesting because we have ties with Europe and America, we actually get involved with both agencies. I've worked with NASA and with ESA, and sometimes NASA and ESA don't work well together, but we're in a kind of a neat position that we can join forces with both, and we get invited to. So we've been invited to participate in a mission that is being considered by NASA.
That is extremely, extremely cool. How much time do you think it will be before a Canadian steps foot on the moon?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Canada joined into the Lunar Gateway project. So Prime Minister Trudeau committed $2 billion to that effort. And in return for supporting that work, Canada gets a flight to the moon for a Canadian.
We have extended versions of the interviews you've been seeing here today on our YouTube channel. When you're over on YouTube, be sure to give us a like and hit that subscribe button. When we return, we take a look at the latest local stories from our region that made headlines this week. Keep it right here.